Do you sometimes get confused by concepts like working directory versus repository versus what comes in between the staging area? Watch this video to find out the difference once and for all. To explain these concepts, let's consider the project of our writer Alex. So we have this project, Alex's book, and she has three files basically: ideas.txt, chapter 1, and chapter 2. And we saw in the previous episodes that she had already made 2 commits. Now the concept of working directory, it's quite simple. It is where we see our files, where we add a new file, where we edit our files. So this is what we're used to without the Git stuff. So this is where we work, where we save our things. When we open our file, chapter 1 in the editor, we can see its content. So all of this is in the working directory. And then we have the repository. Repository is all the things that we save as we use git commit at the end of the day. And it is basically in the .git folder that Git manages. And for example, in our repository, we have made so far 2 commits. And in every commit, we have a snapshot of the whole project of all of these 3 files at the time that we made the snapshot. Now, that's also quite simple. So the repository is basically everything inside the .git folder. So what is the staging area? This staging area, which is also called index, is what confuses many Git users. To explain what the staging area is, let's imagine that Alex has worked on chapter 1 and chapter 2 ever since the second commit, so she has some new changes for these 2 files. So she has added a new paragraph on chapter 2, which is now complete, and she wants to save these changes. She wants to commit these changes to have a snapshot of it. But she doesn't want to commit the changes in chapter 1 because it's a work in progress. She has not finished yet what she wanted to finish. So she has changes for these 2 files, but she only wants to save the content of chapter 2. This is where the staging area comes to help us. So when we type git add chapter 2, what happens is that we are telling Git to only add chapter 2 to the indexing area, and this is what will be committed next. So everything that we add to this staging area will be committed next. And since in this example we want to only have chapter 2 and not chapter 1, we only add chapter 2. And when we use git commit to have our third commit, in this example, the only difference between the snapshot that is saved in the third commit and the second commit is the content of chapter 2, because all the rest stayed the same. Chapter 1, even though chapter 1 has some changes in our working directory, but we did not save these in our third snapshot. So if you look at the content of chapter 1 in this third commit, it's the same as with the second commit. But if you look at the content of chapter 2, there is a change now. So basically the third commit is exactly the same, has exactly the same files as the second commit, except for chapter 2, which has a new version. So in summary, staging area enables us to choose which files we want to have in our next commit. And in this example that I just gave, it helped us to only save chapter 2 while we didn't want to save chapter 1 for now. Now in this video, we also see a new command, git add, which basically does 2 things. It uses our git hash object to create the blob or the content of the file, as well as it adds that file to the tree, to the index. So we basically, by git add chapter 2, we will add the chapter 2 file to the index, to the tree. And we also see a new command, git commit. And these 2 commands we will use all the time in our daily work. We will not be using these plumbing commands because they are difficult to remember and not that easy to work with, while git add and git commit are simple and easy to work with. And git commit itself does 2 things. So it first uses git write tree to save the tree, and then it commits that tree. And then we have our third commit. Now let's see this in action. So I'm in our Alex book new project, and if I do ls command, I can see the files inside this directory, this project. I can also show what is in the chapters directory. It's just one file, chapters 2. So we have basically 3 text files. Now everything that we see here that I can, for example, use cat to open chapter file, or I can use an editor to edit, or I can add a new file. Everything that happens in this terminal, this is called the working directory. This is where we work basically. Now let's see how we can see the staging area or the index. So basically, again, we have our files. We can use the command git status to get a status of the branch that we are working at. So it says we are on branch master, which is the default branch, or it could be main in some versions. And it says nothing to commit, and working tree is clean. So when you have this message, nothing to commit, working tree clean, it means that compared to the previous snapshot, previous commit, which was commit 2 in our previous video, we have no more changes in our working directory. So basically, we haven't changed anything in our working directory, so in these files, ever since we saved our second commit. I'm gonna use the command git log, which will show us the history of the commit. So here is the second commit, the commit message, and the hash of the commit, and here is the first commit. So we have 2 commits so far, and basically, again, when we do git status, it says that there are no new changes. Okay, I'm gonna clear. So let's say Alex has worked on chapter 1 and chapter 2. I'm gonna use nano editor, and I'm gonna open chapter 2 first, and I'm gonna copy paste this text. So it's difficult to see, but I'm gonna just save this, and then I'm gonna use cat to show the content. So here we go. Alex has written this new body of work, which is a new paragraph for chapters 2 file. But she's also working on chapter 1. So let's say we have chapter 1, and she is working, and she has, but she has not finished yet her sentence, and she's working on this file. So I'm gonna save this as well, and we can see the content using cat command. So this is unfinished work on chapter 1. So now if I do git status, this time Git will show us that changes not a stage for commit. So in the changes not a stage for the commit, it's basically, it shows the changes that we have in our working directory that are not staged to be committed. So we have changes to chapter 1 as well as chapter 2.txt files. And here Git also tells us that no changes added to commit. So it basically telling us we have not added anything to our index or to our staging area to be committed. And it's telling us use git add to add this, or use git commit with -a. So in this case, we don't want to have our snapshot, our third commit, to save the changes for both of these files. We only want to save our changes for chapter 2.txt because we have finished this work. As we saw, we have a new paragraph, but the work on chapter 1 is ongoing. So we only want to save the changes for chapter 2. So for this, the staging area comes handy. For this, we can use the command git add, and then I will only provide chapter 2 file. So you see, I'm just giving chapter 2 text file to be added to the staging area. And now we hit enter. Now if I do git status, now here is the staging area, changes to be committed. The staging area is basically where we put the changes that we want to be in this new snapshot, new saving. And here we have only added chapter 2.txt file to our staging area. And if we use git commit, we will be saving only changes of chapter 2. And you can see here that chapter 1 is still, it says changes not staged for commit. So we are not putting the changes of chapter 1 to be saved in the staging area. So I just cleared the screen. So let's do git status again. And now we can just use git commit, and with -m we can put our message as before. We can say update chapter 2 file and hit enter. All right, so Git is asking us to update our email and our username. We will do this in a later video, but for now let's do again git log, and here we see that we have indeed our third commit. So if we do git status, we see that the file chapter 2 is not anymore in the staging area. There is nothing actually in the staging area, but there is still chapter 1. There are some changes to chapter 1 file in the working directory which are not in the commit history yet. And we can see this by, first we can see the file in the working directory. So we see this is the content of chapter 1 in the working directory, and we can use git show head. Head is basically points to the latest commit, and then we can say chapter 1.text, and we see that this is the content that we have in our git history, basically in the third commit. So we see that this is different. So there is this difference. That's why Git is telling us that this file has been modified. All right, so this example shows basically that this is basically the repository, what we have saved in the .git objects directory. This is our working directory, what we see currently in our terminal or GUI in our computer. And the staging area is basically the changes that we want to be committed. It's the tree. If you remember from our previous videos, it's the tree that we will be saving. All right, I hope this video made the difference between working directory, staging area or index, and the repository clear for you, and see you in the next video.